All right, there's one final thing I want to show you here. I've got all kinds of palettes open on my screen here, so I'm going to close them out. The graphic styles can be closed. The appearance palette can go back over on the right-hand side of the screen. So we'll go File, Open, and into the Lesson 7 folder, and there you will find Comic Bubbles. Go ahead and open up Comic Bubbles. All right, and this file here I've created for you. This is a series of quotes out of one of my favorite movies of all time, Ghostbusters here. And I created these as little comic book bubbles here. And you know what I did with these at home is I actually printed them off, had them laminated, stuck little magnets on the back of them after I cut them out and stuck them on my fridge. So you can do the same there if you like as well. Now, the purpose of this file is twofold. Number one, to provide perhaps a little bit of inspiration. We have some effects on some of these objects and some drop shadows and all kinds of neat things. The other thing is I want to show you how I create these little comic book bubbles. And again, you see these all over my website, all over the place. I love creating these little things here. So I'm going to grab some of this text in here. Now this has all been grouped together, so I'm going to have to ungroup a whole bunch of times here. I just hit Control-G or Command-G a whole bunch of times. I want to grab just that text in there. Might help if I zoom in just a touch. And I only want the letters there. So I'm going to hold down Shift, grab these letters there. There, I got them. It was a little bit tricky to grab them, but I did get them. Once I have them, I'm going to group them and copy them just by Alt-dragging on them. There we are. And I'll drag this way over to the right here into some open space. And I'll show you how I create my own little comic book bubbles here. So I always start with an oval, and I always start with default fill and stroke. So go ahead and hit your D key on your keyboard. Then I'll hold down Alt and drag from the center here and send this guy to the back, something like that. Back on my black arrow tool, I'm just doing this very, very quickly here. There we are, something like that. Something that sort of fits the text there. I might scooch this over just a little bit here. Now here's the trick. I want this to look like it's been hand-drawn. If I sort of pan back over, you can see that these lines here go thin and then they go thick and they go back to thin, this sort of thing. But I also have my little arrow here, and I've experimented with a whole bunch of different approaches as to how to do this best. Go ahead and pan back over to your text over on the right there. And to get that little pointy thing that's going to point to the person who's speaking, I usually use my pen tool. And I just kind of grab my pen tool, 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks to close it up there. There it is. And again, I still have default fill and stroke there. Now, like I say, I've experimented a little bit. Here's the best way that I've been able to figure out, and maybe I should spend more time on this. But anyway, this is what I've sort of figured out, or you might be thinking I should spend less time on this. But anyway, I will grab the bubble in the background, and I will remove the stroke. So it's just a white object. I'll copy it, Control-C, Command-C, and then I'll paste it in back, Control-B or Command-B on the Mac, and I'm going to fill this guy with black. All right, so now this guy's filled with black. Here's what I do. I want to pull him out from the side so I can see that there, but I'm just going to undo here. I want it to be equal on both sides, left and right. So I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, and look at that. Just pull that out right there. I'll pull it out, but not to the same amount on the top and bottom. Look at that, perfect. Maybe I'll give it just a touch more there. Wonderful, there it is. Now, what about this guy? That doesn't look right, does it? And again, I've experimented with a couple of different approaches here. Here's my fix. I'm going to take this guy, send him all the way to the back. Still doesn't look right. I'll take this black guy and send him all the way to the back. There, now that looks like a comic book bubble. So, if I go into my outline mode, it's still a closed object. You just can't see that path because it's behind this object here. Pretty cool. Now, let's do some other things. I'm going to take this object here, and I'm going to go into my appearance palette. I'll pull this guy over here so you can see it. And I'm going to add on a stroke here. I'll just use black. So I'll use my color palette here and choose black. And then I'll go and apply my offset path effect. So effect path down to offset path. Turn on my preview. Now I don't want that much. So I'll reduce this down maybe to 3 or something like this. Whatever I seem to come up with, whatever number seems to work there. And then OK. Looking pretty good. I want it to look like this person here is shouting here. This is actually Bill Murray who's shouting this line here. So I wanted to make it look like he's shouting, so I give it a little bit of extra emphasis here. And then here's the icing on the cake. I love doing this stuff. I'm going to grab this guy here, and I could grab my swatches palette here. I'll tug him over from the side here. And you can see here I could add more emphasis by putting a stroke on here, but I still run into some problems here. So I'm going to undo that. And rather than putting a stroke on this guy, I'm going to make sure that my fill swatch is on top, and then maybe throw in a color like that. Take this little pointy bit here and fill it in with the same color. Now I have something like this happening. Or you know where it gets really fun is when I start messing around with some gradients. Now, I'll leave that up to you. I'll leave these guys here to show you some examples of filling these guys here with some gradients. So there's a linear gradient going from white to yellow there. You can see a drop shadow I've used on there. All kinds of neat different effects. There's another gradient on that guy there. So anyway, this file again is really more for your reference, really more for you to have some fun with. So have lots and lots of fun with working with your appearance and your effects and your type effects in Illustrator CS3.